everyone. Mark Garman here with the Determined Show. As always, each and every week, I try to bring on a special guest so they can share their testimony in hopes that you can pull a small piece of their testimony and carry it on with you to bring some sort of inspiration to your life with their testimony. This week, I have on a very special guest, and she's going to share with you her story. Her name is Cam Compton. Without further ado, drum roll, please. And here she is, Cam.
Hey,
How you
Mark.
doing?
I'm great. I am really good.
Hey, so why don't you go ahead and tell the community who Cam is, or give a brief introduction.
Sure. So Cam is an 8-year stroke survivor. I am married. I've been married for 2 years and have dated my now husband for 2 years before that. I have 2 daughters, and I gained a son and a daughter when we got married, and 3 grandchildren, and I have a grandchild of my own. I work part-time, fortunately, in the same office that I was in before my stroke. I do work in a major hospital here in St. Louis, and I don't know what else to tell you.
There you go. Hey, that was plenty. I think we have a little understanding of who Cam is. That's great. So now let's go ahead and jump into the nitty-gritty details. All right, so we want to know who Cam was before you had your stroke. So if someone was to go ask your best friend, hey, who's Cam? Like, what's she like? What does she like to do? Like, what's her personality like?
So Cam was very involved. So I worked full time, as I said, in the same job I'm in now, in the hospital. I volunteered at a homeless shelter 3 or 4 times a year with their kids. I ran 2 Girl Scout troops.
Wow.
I volunteered at school and church. I was just very busy, but I didn't
Yeah.
mind busy. I was very organized in a lot of ways, so I got things done. Um, I also had a daughter who was very involved in horses, and so we did lessons and cleaned the barn, and I had to do horse shows, and then I had my youngest, my granddaughter was living with me at the time, and she had her things. So I ran her Girl Scout troop and my youngest daughter's troop, and I was, I scrapbooked, I rubber stamped, I just did all kinds of stuff, and I was fun. I had lots of friends, very involved, with doing family functions and just you name it. I did Girl Scout neighborhood events. I did district events. Now, I helped with them. I didn't necessarily run the whole thing, but
Right.
I just did. Yeah, I taught crafting at Michael's. That was a part-time job I took in all of this, and
Wow.
I taught classes and was their like organizer for their classes, and I taught their uh, national classes and things like that. So that was
Wow.
basically me before stroke.
That's pretty intense. So
Yeah.
we have an aloha from Napa, California, from Salud, who is an avid watcher, and we have a hello from Washington State from Naomi. And then we have a hey Mark from Austin, Texas,
Well,
from Jerry Wald.
I know of Jerry Wald. I've talked to him before.
There you go.
Yeah. Hi, Jerry.
Now, so obviously that is a ton of stuff to be on your plate,
Yes.
and you have to be extremely organized or else you're not going to be able to juggle that. No way.
Absolutely.
No freaking way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had calendars. If I had a party at the homeless shelter, I started working on it 3 weeks beforehand and had my checklist and
Right.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I was very organized, and you notice I used the word was.
Yeah. I caught that. 100%. So, something that caught my attention was, you said that your daughter was into horses and she rode competitively. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. So, how old was she when she did that?
She did it until right around the time I had my stroke. It was either right before or shortly after. She was thrown, and it was a pretty bad thing. So actually, it must have been right before my stroke. But anyway, she was thrown, and we thought she was okay, and they were going to send her, home. Well, with me to go to the hospital, and then she started having neck and back pain. So she actually quit riding after that, or about that time. We went to the barn a few times after that, but yeah, she just didn't have it in her. She loves the horses. She'll go clean the barn or brush them or whatever, but she doesn't really have an interest in riding anymore.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you guys have horses or?
No, but we had 7 we could play with.
Uh,
So, yeah, her trainer had 7 horses, and so we could go and play if we wanted to. I
that's pretty.
didn't ride, but I didn't mind feeding them and brushing them, and I didn't particularly care for cleaning out the stalls.
Yeah. That does not sound like fun.
No, 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 it wasn't. But it actually gave us lessons at a cheaper price. So, you
Oh,
just do what you got to do.
yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah,
Who doesn't like cheaper? And then
exactly.
we also have a hello from mysterious place here from Shannon Garman. That's just some lovely woman. I don't know who she is.
Okay.
I think she might be my wife, but
Oh,
but
I didn't get this. Okay.
yeah. So and then you said also that you had 2 daughters, right?
Yes, I have
Oh,
2
you have
daughters.
2 daughters.
Yeah.
And what's the age difference between the 2 daughters?
So they're about 12 and a half years different. So yeah. So
There
when
you
my
go.
youngest was born, the older one was about 12, a little over 12.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you had a constant babysitter.
Yeah. Tried not to use her like that, but yes, we
Man,
did.
that is one lucky daughter you have. My it's my sister and I. We're 2 years apart, and then we have 2 younger brothers, and the age difference between my younger brothers and I are 9 years and 11 years. Man,
Oh,
we were watching those kids left and right, almost like every weekend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was pretty lucky then, I'm taking it.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. That's why my mind went right to that. You know what I mean? But
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
I can see that.
yeah,
But yeah, I tried not to do that.
yeah, yeah, but that age difference is pretty awesome. So because we're pretty close as far as all 4 of us are, but
Hmm.
all 4 of us siblings are. But
Yeah.
let's go ahead and jump into what Do you remember that day
Oh,
that
absolutely.
you had your stroke? Can you
Yes.
like walk us through like what you were doing, how it happened, and all that?
Yes. So, it was the day after my 52nd birthday. I have to point
You
that
are
out.
not that old.
Yes,
Stop it.
I
You look
am.
like you're 32 years old. Stop the
Oh,
nonsense.
come on. Who's paying you for this? Um, no, I will say that a lot of people think I'm a lot younger than I am. In
Mhm.
fact, when I had my stroke and was in the rehab hospital, they would continually ask me my age and then go back to the chart to check it because they thought I was in my, mid 40s or
Uh,
something.
uh,
Um, so that has happened. I'm fortunate to have really good genes from my mother and father. They both were in their 80s, and my dad didn't look his age until a few years before he died, and my mother still didn't look like she was 83, 82 when she died. She looked at several years younger, and they just both had really good skin or something. I don't know, but apparently I inherited that.
there you
But
go. It's a
yeah,
good quality.
so I'm 60 now. Ah! But anyway,
Wow, man,
yeah.
I don't believe that for 1 minute.
Oh, you're good.
I know.
But it was a Tuesday. It was the day
Yeah.
after my birthday, and a group of us were doing there was a weight loss show. I can't remember the name of it right now, where they would take you, from your weight, and you do boot camps every day for a couple of weeks, and I don't know what it was, but anyway, they named it that same thing, and so we were as a group doing it, and we went down to the scales, and it's a big, one of those big scales that you weigh stuff that you're shipping out or
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
so we all got on it and we weighed so that none of us felt bad about giving our individual weight.
Hmm.
Anyway, then we walked back upstairs and I was going to go straight back to my office. And I don't know, something stopped me. And I went to the cafeteria instead, where some of these people were waiting. And I was reading menus and trying to decide what I wanted because they have different stations there. And I got to one station and I was trying to read the sign and I just kind of felt funny. And then everything started moving like we were having an earthquake. And um, I thought it was an earthquake.
Hmm.
Literally, nobody else was panicking but me. So I finally realized it was me and kind of backed myself into a corner. And I
uh,
knew the supervisor was in the lane next to where I was. And I asked somebody to go get her. And they did. And she came over and she was like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong?" And I said, "I don't know." And at that point, I lost all upper body strength. I couldn't hold myself up,
yeah.
straight up. And so they got me into a chair, and then somebody got a wheelchair, and they wheeled me down to the ER. And everything that moved was just, I was nauseated. I even started vomiting at one point. It just, I couldn't, I had to keep my eyes shut, and even then I could still see movement. They finally got me back there to into the room. It was a busy day there. And, they took me through all the right questions and stuff, but I never showed signs of stroke. But they did all of those signs. They made me walk around the room. I was fine. They released me with a diagnosis of vertigo,
Hmm.
which, okay. Um, I didn't know any better.
Right. Right.
So I went to the on site pharmacy and got a prescription for vertigo and got in the car. Unfortunately, my mom was driving because as we left the complex, she made a right turn and I blacked out. Granted, it's only a couple of seconds, but when I came back, I couldn't tell you if I was upside down, right side up, inside out, whatever. It took
Yeah.
me a minute to compose. She made a left turn. I was fine. And
Yeah.
I told her, I said, "We got to go back to the hospital." I said, "Something just happened. Something's wrong." And so she
Mm-hmm.
made a right turn, and guess who blacked out again?
Wow.
So I
That's
don't
a
know
trip.
if it was because my stroke was on the right side, but every right turn we would make, I would black out and then not, I would be disoriented. So we got
Yeah.
back, and so I had been admitted to the emergency room the first time like about 11:30, and they released me about 4:30, and we were back there before 5. And they wanted me to sign in again, and at that point I couldn't even hold myself up. I couldn't move. I had to have help with anything that I did. I didn't even know how to get out of the car. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's, and I didn't know why I didn't know how to get out of the car. I knew I was supposed to know, but I didn't. So I have a I don't know, a guy out there yelling at me, get out of the car. Come on, I've got the wheelchair. And I'm like, just hold on. And my mother's yelling at
Take
me
a
from the
chill
other
pill,
side.
right?
Yeah, my mother's yelling at me from the other side. And I'm like, I couldn't process what to do. So
Yeah.
I did finally get out of the car. They took me in a wheelchair, and they wanted me to sign in again, and I'm like, I can't. I didn't know anything. I didn't. I just couldn't. So we did ask. There was a, a not a cart, a bed sitting in the middle of the emergency room. And I said, can I get up on it? Because I couldn't hold myself up in the bed. So they helped me in it, and I laid down. And then I had right arm pain for, I don't know how long. I mean, it was intense. It was going up my whole right arm, which I think the right arm thing is a heart attack and not stroke,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't do anything because
Yeah.
I came to my car, because I'd just been there, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know
So,
when they
so was
finally.
the pain kind of like pins and needles, kind of like when your arm falls asleep, and just more painful? Like how would you describe the
It
pain?
was it was like a shooting pain up my right arm. Just super bad. I mean, super bad, because I was crying and moaning, and it just wasn't going away. So it was intense pain. I wouldn't say it was tingly. It was just this sharp pain, and it just went straight up my arm and stayed there the whole time.
Wow.
Um, so it did finally kind of ease, and I fell asleep for a little while. I don't know when they took me back, because I lost all sense of time at that point. But
Yeah.
I was finally admitted to the hospital out sometime after midnight, and it was still vertigo, and they brought, I had a doctor come in who was with, uh, I guess she was the one on call that day, uh, for my doctor's group, and she just poo-pooed the whole thing. I think she thought I was faking something.
Mm-hmm.
And a physical therapist came in to teach me how to walk with vertigo. We took 2 steps. She turned me around to the bed, put me back to bed, and said, "This is not vertigo." And then the tests started. So,
Like CAT scan,
EKG.
MRI type test.
Yeah. Yeah. See, they had only done a CT scan the night before, and they did the MRI, they did the EKG, they did, I don't know what this one was, where they put the camera down your throat and they're looking at your heart to see what all of that is. So the results came back late that afternoon, and I had a stroke. And they could actually tell me what my stroke was caused by. So apparently, I have a genetic deformity in the artery, and it got blocked. It was so small, that it caused this stroke. They did tell me that if it had been a full working artery, that this would have been catastrophic. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know if I'd be dead, or if it meant that I would just be so disabled that, I wouldn't be able to do anything.
Right.
Uh, but, and then that's when everything started. So, 4 days after that, I was in a rehab hospital where I stayed for 6 weeks. And
So when you were admitted to the hospital, um, you were going through the test.
mhm,
The therapist came in, try to give you the walking and all that stuff. Because I've had a stroke. A lot of people, that watch the show have had a stroke. So when we have our strokes, we're boom affected on one side or the other, to the point where we have to learn how to do everything all over again, walk, talk, use our affected side. So what deficits did you experience right away? And then what did you have to like learn how to do all over again and all that stuff?
So I had to learn. Well, it since my stroke was on the right side, it was my left side originally that was affected, and so I did have to relearn to walk. Um,
Okay.
and I started out with a walker, and
Mm-hmm.
then the joke is that eventually, 6, 9 months later, somewhere in there, I lost my walker in the barn with the horses, and it was never to be seen again. Uh, I don't recommend that for everybody, okay? But
Right.
that was gonna work for me. They
Yeah.
tried me with different canes and stuff and said I was dangerous, and I said a danger to myself or others, and they said both.
Yeah.
So,
So you're
uh,
you're whacking people with the cane or what?
I don't know. I couldn't get, I think I'd call it cadence down on any
Uh,
of those devices, and
yeah.
so they tried the quad and the tri and the double arm with the wrist holds, and I
Huh.
just couldn't get that to work. So
Yeah.
I used the walker.
Okay.
But it was a lot of my problem is cognitive,
I see.
um, and I've learned over the years coping skills. So that's not as bad. But the fatigue, I have a huge problem with fatigue.
Yeah.
Um, I in the first few years, I was kind of okay because I only worked 20 hours a week and I had routine. Um, Several years ago, I had to go to 24 hours a week in order to keep my job, the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to have insurance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. This
I,
this whole thing that we go through and whatnot, the medical bills could pile up, especially if you have no insurance.
right.
Yeah.
Well, even with insurance, my hospital bill was over $20,000.
Yikes.
It's with the insurance. So, um, the good thing is I know the system, and so I called, said I couldn't afford this. They took my financial information, and I got like 75% of it written off.
Nice.
So, and a lot of people don't know that. I just let out a secret. But uh,
So it's only $5,000.
I think it was just a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was a good thing. My rehab bill was only like $200. I'm like,
What?
for 6 weeks. I'm like, you paid for, all of this for rehab, but you wouldn't pay that more of the hospital bill. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Hey,
But
sounds like a
yeah,
win to me.
oh, absolutely. Because I was only working part time. I was single. I had a
Yeah.
house. I had 2 kids in the house.
Yeah.
You know, um, and I did get uh, disability, long-term disability that I had paid into through work, and but still, that doesn't equal the salary I used to make.
Right.
So even then, that was a hardship. But yeah, so I spent 6 weeks learning how to walk, uh, treating some of my cognitive problems, learning how to try to dress myself, bathe myself, all of that. Um, you know, I had goals and everything, and I met those. And then they released me after 6 weeks because, again, insurance wouldn't cover anymore because I mean, I was still making progress, but they felt that I could be at home. So
Yeah.
I ended up being able to have about a year and a half of outpatient services by the way everything fell. So um, I did the first set, and then we got approved for about 6 to 8 or something more visits, or 12. I don't know what it was. And then they were going to cut me off. And the nurse from the insurance company called me. And I said, look, I'm not safe yet in my own house. So I got enough visits to take me almost to the end of the year. And then, of
Nice.
course, at the beginning of the year, what you get new visits. So I spaced my visits out and was able to do that for another 5-ish or so months. And my speech therapy ended. I'm considered high functioning brain injury. So at one point they there was nothing else they could do. They had done all the games, all the tests, all the everything in their, I don't know, book that
Yeah.
they could do. So I stopped that part of it, but I did continue the occupational and the physical therapy as long as I could. And then when I got home, well, I was already home, but and after that, I made up my own therapies. So I did non-traditional things like took my granddaughter and we went and learned archery because it
Wow.
was so. And this is where I have to say, so my end result in my disability is my left leg and my right arm. And the only thing I can tell you is I'm a redhead and I do not follow instructions.
Hmm.
So it didn't end up all being on my left side. My left arm is stronger than my right arm.
Hmm.
How it happened, I don't know. But yeah, so we did archery because it made me pull back my arm and
Yeah.
hold the bow and, shoot, try to keep everything steady. I walked with friends. They weren't long walks to begin with, and they never were even, I don't think I did more than a mile during the first few years.
Hmm.
But we, did it with the walker, then without the walker, and I just kept progressing. Um, my husband, who was my boyfriend, I guess, at some point,
Well,
bought me a
that's
tricycle.
usually how that works.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know.
So, yeah, I guess you wouldn't want a husband and then a boyfriend because that doesn't. But anyway, so he bought me a tricycle, and so I now was running around the neighborhood for a bit on a little red tricycle, just like the ones the kids ride.
Yeah. I totally 100% want one of those.
Yeah,
Those things are so freaking cool.
yeah, so I want a bell on it, and uh, it does have a basket on the back, so we can put, maybe if the dogs would sit in it, we could put a dog in it, but
Uh-huh.
I don't think my dogs would sit in it very long.
Right.
But so we did that, and then he took me to like the shooting range, and I got to shoot guns,
Nice.
lots of guns.
Nice.
So we're trying to find one that I could use easily, and that's not very easy, to cock the gun and to,
Right.
hold it and, whatever else. Even loading it sometimes could be a problem.
Yeah.
But, so we did that. I've done, uh, oh, so Jerry is asking on here, sorry, I just saw this pop up,
Yeah.
but he wanted to know if I got TPA. No, it was too late. I'd had my stroke on a Tuesday, probably in the morning, but maybe in the afternoon, and they didn't diagnose the stroke until Wednesday, late afternoon, after they did finally all the tests, when they figured out it was not um, uh, uh, vertigo.
Right. That
But
is just, I find that so incredible that, because one of the, they have that acronym FAST or whatever, because
yes,
once you have a stroke, you want to get to the hospital as soon as possible because, it mitigates as much damage
right.
to the body, the brain. Um,
So if you use FAST, it's face, arms, uh, uh,
speech.
speech, and time.
Yeah.
So I had no face issues.
Right.
My speech was fine. My
Yeah.
arms were fine. I had no stroke symptoms.
Right.
Now, who knows? The new one is your tongue. So I don't know about the tongue thing because they didn't ask that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't have any symptoms, none, absolutely nothing. And I didn't think I had a stroke by what I knew about stroke.
Yeah.
So I get that they didn't get it. And since I was
Yeah.
wobbly and the thing with the nausea with people moving, even with my eyes closed and stuff like that, I get why they thought it was vertigo, but I've heard from so many people that they've been told, and women especially were told that, because I also run a stroke support group, an in-person stroke support group. And I've heard from a lot of women that they were told that also. So I don't know if sometimes we just show different signs
Yeah.
or no signs, or what it is. But yeah, so that's that part of it. So I do. I didn't. I wouldn't have thought I'd had a
Yeah.
stroke.
Well, the point that I was trying to get at was the time aspect. So, you have a stroke, and the sooner you get to the prognosis,
Hmm.
and you dive into treating the stroke, the
Hmm.
less damage it does to the brain. In
Right.
turn, the less damage it does to the body.
Right.
So with yours, it was like what, a day and a half, 2 days later, where they finally diagnosed that you had a stroke.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
they started testing around 24 hours later. So, yeah. So that was way too late. Because I think it has to be given within 3 to 6 hours, maybe, or three to
Yeah.
four hours. Yeah, after your stroke. And I do believe, though, there's a new drug that may be coming out where it is a longer period of time that before have to uh, skip it. It's
Yeah.
more like 6 or 12 hours or something like that. But
Mhm.
I don't know if it's been approved yet or not.
Yeah.
But
Like Salute is saying here, despite the hospital not diagnosing your stroke right away, you are doing fantastic.
I am. I have to say this, and I don't say it to brag. I am. So I am living a much better life, I think. But it's a hard road to get here. So for like 6-ish years, 7 years, I fought every step of the way to regain balance, to
Mm.
be able to do the things I do. I met my husband 4 years ago, and that changed. That was a change in my life. I sold my home in 2017. It was a two-story home, and I had tried for 5 years, to 6 years or something, to work that house. I was on almost an acre lot, and I just couldn't do it. And so we decided to sell my house and move into Joe's house in the city of St. Louis, and because it was one level, ranch type, and
Mhm.
smaller yard, a big yard for the city, but a smaller yard. And I did not do well there either. I mean, I loved the home, and the quirkiness of it and all of that, but I couldn't meet neighbors. We couldn't find a church. It just wasn't working for me. It was a long, long drive to work, I thought, and it was all highway. And so change is not good for me, guys. So I don't know how many of you have that, but yeah, so this change was never good. We tried for about 2.5 years, and last July 3rd, we moved into a new house. And this is my happy place, and that has helped too. So, I, the last year and a half or so, I've been working more on the me part.
Mhm.
So, I have done something that I call neuro movement, which helped me regain more balance and more use in my arm. I've done chiropractors, and I was seeing a doctor of Eastern medicine and doing acupuncture and drinking teas, and then I went back to the gym, um, which was hard for me because I'd been an avid gym user before the stroke. So I was there 2, 3 times a week. But my energy levels weren't really allowing me, but I was determined to start this. So I started going to the gym, and my husband would go with me. And then I worked with a personal trainer once a week, once every other week, but not all the time, but enough to get me familiar with the equipment and exercises to do. And and I still progressed, but I switched when we moved. We were closer to another gym, and I actually worked for a few months before they closed down with a trainer who also had a background in physical therapy, and I made more progress in 2 months than I think I'd made in like a year. Um,
Wow.
so then when we moved and uh, they actually closed and have not reopened here in St. Louis. So we found another gym not far from here. And it's really interesting because the trainer that I'm using now pushes me harder than anyone ever has. And he is a TBI survivor, so he doesn't take my bull.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So when I say I'm tired,
Hey,
yeah, when I say I'm tired, he says, "Suck it up, Buttercup."
there
He
you
said,
go.
so yeah, so I've never stopped. I've been on a weight loss journey, and over the last, well, more this year I lost than I did last year, but altogether I've lost about a little over 60 pounds.
Good for
Um,
you.
yeah.
Bravo.
So, but it is a process. It really is a process. I had to accept this life.
Yep.
Uh, I had to find purpose in this life, and I had to practice gratitude.
There you go.
So, every day I would wake up and I'd be thankful to be alive another day. I would be thankful for the sunshine, the rain, whatever I could find. And
Yeah.
then I would add to it so that I'm grateful for my husband, that I
Yep.
woke up this morning, for the sunshine, for my new house, for living on a lake, for having a
Yeah.
boat,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And then purpose. I found a purpose. It doesn't matter what your purpose is. If you feel compelled to call people and check on them, that can be your purpose. My
Boom.
purpose has been helping stroke survivors. So I run a stroke support group here in St. Louis, and I have 2 pages. I don't really post on them enough as I should, but one is Second Chance Stroke Survivors, St. Louis.
There you go.
The other is my stroke support group page, and it's Miracles in Progress. And as I said, we meet in Chesterfield, and those are my 2 pages. But I found the purpose. I have to tell you, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, I didn't like me. I
Yeah.
didn't like this new me.
Yeah.
I wanted the old me back. Now, I think it was more like a couple of years that I started accepting who I was. Now, I'm still the old me to an extent, but
Right.
I'm a new me, and
Yep.
I've redone myself a bit, to be who I am now. And I like her. I like Cam. She's
There you
pretty
go.
funny, she's quirky, she's, you know, what forgetful.
I think it's because you changed your name, Cam.
Oh yeah, that's true. You know,
Right.
yeah, I do. And the story behind that, guys, is my full name is Cameron, and I went by Cammy for a long, long time, and then I shortened it because as I was getting older, I felt Cammy was kind of juvenile. So I'm Cam. So I'm Cam now, and yeah, that could be too.
Right.
I keep changing my name,
There you
yeah,
go.
but yeah,
One of the things that I preach, Cam,
yeah,
is it's all about PMA, positive mental attitude.
yes.
So that is extreme, and you obviously touched on it. So it's all about positive mental attitude, and it's extremely important in
Hmm.
one's recovery. If they're not in the right headspace when
Mm-hmm.
they're doing their recovery, it's going
Right.
to be extremely hard for them to progress in the recovery.
Right.
And, as you were telling your story, I was kind of like, obviously I was listening, but, I was kind of like, I was kind of like taking in what you were saying, and I was noticing that, as, you were talking that you were, you were talking saying how you were be- becoming more happy with
Mm-hmm.
where you were at, moving into a new place, finding your soulmate, this and that. And then, so it seems like the PMA kind of started kicking in a little bit. And then you talked about how, your physical therapy, you made more progress in that physical therapy in that 6 month time span than you had that whole time. So that's kind of like why I preach so much on the importance of PMA, positive mental attitude, because that's such a powerful,
Yeah.
powerful thing. The
So,
brain. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. So I was just going to tell this little story that I tell all the time. But, in my stroke support group, we had a dentist come in who was a one-handed dentist. Now, he didn't have a stroke, but his symptoms were stroke-like. So he was paralyzed on one side. Um, but one of the things that I took out of that, well, there were a couple. One is how the heck do you become a dentist one-handed?
Right.
But he fought for that and he worked at it and he did it. And apparently he was very successful because he was telling us, he flew planes and not just one. He'd had over the years several different ones and different kinds and, whatever. He played golf. But his story was basically his wife took care of him. Everything that he did, she dressed him, she fed him breakfast, and he stayed around. And one day she said, I'm leaving. And he goes, well, how am I going to get dressed? And she said, you're going to figure it out. He said, what about my breakfast? You'll figure it out. Well, she came home. His shirt was buttoned wonky. His shoes weren't tied. I don't know if he ate like, dry cereal, but,
Yeah.
and from that day forward, he worked very hard to get better, worked hard to get back to dentistry. And he said, the one thing you have to do is take the word can't out of your vocabulary. He said it doesn't
Exactly.
belong there because you can. He said, look at me. I'm a one-handed dentist. Who does that?
Right.
And seriously. So I thought about that. And most of the time, I did not say can't. I would say I can't do it right now, but I am striving towards that goal.
Mhm.
But I basically did not say that I can't do that.
Right.
I still things that I try to do. It's a lot harder, but it may take me 10 years. It may take me, 2 more weeks. I don't know.
Mhm.
But yeah, so take the word can't out of your vocabulary.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying how you have uh, a group. Is it a group or is it what is it? A stroke group?
Yeah, it's
That
a stroke support group. So we meet twice, well, not right now. We meet twice a month and at a different time. So like a Saturday, the first Saturday of the month, we meet like at 10:30, and the third Monday of the month we meet at 3 o'clock, trying to meet everyone's needs.
mm,
So we can have anywhere. I've had one person to 18. We're a
wow.
fairly small group.
Well, that's still a pretty good following.
Yeah, so, but most of the time it's smaller.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's like five-ish, maybe six or seven, that's the norm.
Yeah.
But, it's a small group. I don't usually schedule speakers because I think a lot of people need to talk about themselves, especially those that are newer. And we meet at the rehab hospital where I was. So, they bring the patients in who aren't having therapy, and they join us. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of anger and stuff. So those of us that have been in this for a long time kind of try to work with them and tell them
Right.
what we know. And so it's all good. And I get something out of it, even to this day, 8 years later, working with these people and them working with me. So I'm also a stroke advocate at the hospital. So they call me when they need someone to talk to a stroke patient. A lot of times they call me because I am already there usually when they need somebody
Hmm.
working. And so I can walk over to a room and talk to somebody about that. So I do that also, which I forgot to mention. But yeah,
That's pretty neat. So when you do that, obviously, so they're already told by the doctor that they have had a stroke, and then you kind of go in there and you tell them like what to expect, or what exactly do you do with that?
well, a lot of times, they especially called me early on when they started the program for those patients that were younger.
Yeah.
So, in their 40s, in their 50s, because uh, they thought only old people had that, or you know, the family wasn't coping well or whatever it was. And I would just go in and they could ask questions, or I would just tell them my story and then they'd ask questions. It wasn't, it's nothing that's written down,
Hmm.
so yeah, and that's kind of a cool program. And I know many hospitals now do that. So you might check with your local hospitals, especially if they have a stroke floor or a stroke area or a stroke coordinators, and see if you can do that, if they have a program where you could come in and be a volunteer to do that.
That's pretty cool. I think I might check that out. Actually, it's pretty
Yeah,
neat. Yeah. And
yeah.
then yeah, I'm kind of going backtracking a little bit just because I'm curious.
Mhm.
So you had your stroke when you said you had your stroke when you were
52. Oh,
52,
yeah.
and that would have made your kids how old?
So my oldest daughter was already out of the house, but my youngest was 15ish, 16.
Mm,
Uh, I had it, so she was still in high school.
right.
And my granddaughter that was living with us, she was 10. So I
Wow.
think that would make her in the second-ish, third grade, maybe.
Hmm.
I remember, but yeah. So
So what was the impact on your kids?
my 10-year-old granddaughter took it pretty well. I think she was scared, but she did fine. My teenager, my Kelsey, it's funny because when back to school shopping came up, we would go shopping, and she would like run to the store, get out of the car, say, "Oh, just hang out in the store and I'll find you when I'm ready to check out." So, me being a parent, followed her
uh,
and tried to pick out stuff to help her.
yeah.
And I'd yell across the store even if I had to, um, just to embarrass her because I knew exactly what she was doing,
Right.
um, which she didn't like. But, she was also a tennis player, so I would have to go to her tennis tournaments and for school and for her uh, uh, tournaments. I don't know what they were called. There was a group, but anyway, she did these tennis tournaments on the weekends, and so I'd have to go. I was still in my walker, and sometimes she'd accept it, and sometimes not.
Yeah.
So the funny part about this is about 3 years ago, she was still finding herself. So she was just working here and there and stuff. And she approached me and she said, "I know what I'm going to do." And I said, "Oh." okay. She said, I'm going back to school. I'm going to become a nurse. You, number one, you could have heard a pin drop and you could have scraped me up off the floor. Um, but uh, I, I said, okay. She had a plan. So she was going to become a CNA while going to school and work and, go to nursing school. Well, of course, you have to have pre nursing stuff. And so she has done that. And she has worked as a CNA at the rehab hospital. And I uh, put in a word for her and said, her, resume, her applications at the big hospital, if you have an interest. And she got a job at the rehab hospital.
How
And
awesome is that?
yeah, so the
Good
best
for
part about
her.
it is she has worked not always on the stroke floor, but she has worked on the stroke floor. And I think she gets me now. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think before, I think she tolerated me more than she accepted. And I think she accepts me as I am now. And after working with patients, and she tells people my stories sometimes. So,
Yes.
that's kind of, that was my proud mama moment.
For
Um,
sure.
when people find out that she's my daughter. And actually, I've heard some great, I don't know if you want to call them reviews, but people have said some great things about her and said, yeah, she's told us about you. So you're her, stuff like that. So, yeah. So as a teenager, not so accepting, kind of cold and, stuff. But I think part of it was in the beginning, she was afraid. And
Mhm.
the other part of it was just plain being a teenager and,
Right.
know, wanting to do her own thing. Um, but like I said, the 10-year-old was pretty good. I mean, she would help me with some stuff and, she was around and things like that. So she's pretty good. Uh, even now sometimes, but yeah.
That is incredible. I love it.
Yeah,
I
I love the part that Kelsey is doing uh, nursing and the fact that she's at the rehab hospital and working a lot on the stroke floor. That
yeah,
is really the best thing that she could ever do for me.
yeah. It's almost like, you said like she was like, trying to, quote unquote find herself and and then she kind of like maybe just had like an aha moment, type thing, and it was all about you. That's
Well,
something
I'm
really special.
taking it, I'm taking it that it's all about me.
No, I mean that's you're telling the story and that's what I got out of it. I
Yeah.
wasn't taking what you said.
Hmm.
I wasn't taking what you said as with that being that. I was just taking as the how things played out. With how it
Yeah.
played out, and
Yeah.
that's exactly the way I took it. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's my cool story about my youngest.
yeah, that's very very heart touching. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Now, so I will be posting the links to your stroke groups in the description and the our YouTube and your YouTube show, our YouTube show.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
people can go check it out, join whatever they want to do, and then yeah. Do you have any concluding thoughts for our community?
So I can't tell you how to get to where I am, but again, I say gratitude, finding purpose, and accepting yourself are huge parts of this. And hard work. I mean, stroke is not something that in a year you're going to be better. Now, everybody is different. So some people may walk out of the hospital, but they may have major cognitive problems, or some people may be in a wheelchair. but all I can say is keep working. Don't ever stop, even if you don't think you're making progress. Um, because real quick, I my house was two-story that I originally had, and so the stairs were difficult. So when we moved to the ranch, I didn't have stairs, and I didn't have to mess with them. And the new uh, house that we have has stairs to get into the house. In the behind the house where I can also come in, there are no stairs. But to get to the bedroom, which is the only thing on the second floor, there are stairs. There are a lot of stairs. And I didn't realize how not doing the stairs was going to affect me. So it has taken me a while to be able to get up and down these stairs a little more easily again. So you don't realize what work you're doing is actually helping you, because sometimes you don't see it when you're a year, 2 years, 3 years, 8 years out. So keep working no matter what it is. Keep walking, keep, trying to do stairs, keep trying to put on the fitted sheet, whatever it is. So that's my words of wisdom for the night.
There you go. I love it. Now, mine are, I've had something similar when I went through my MBA program, where I went to the hospital and they told me I was fine and sent me home multiple times, like 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
And it turned out that my shunt was broken in my neck. So, with that being said, um, if there's something wrong, you know,
Mhm.
don't, because you could have just went home, you
Right.
know, because they told you, there's nothing wrong. You could have just went home. Instead, you said, no, we got to go back.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, if you know there's something wrong,
Mhm.
you know, go back and get checked out, even if they sent you home and
Mhm.
said that you were fine. You know,
Right.
go back, go back and get checked out. You demand answers. You say, hey, no, look, I came in because of XYZ. You
Mhm.
told me LMNOP, but XYZ is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, let's get this checked out. Let's get it figured out. So that those are
Absolutely. Don't ever let symptom go. If you think something's wrong, usually your intuition is correct, and keep going, or go someplace else, or
yep,
call your physician also. Who knows? But keep fighting for it, because if I had just gone home, who knows what would have happened? Probably nothing, because nothing happened in the 24 hours or so,
yep,
before they figured it out, or started the testing. But
yep,
yeah, absolutely. Keep pushing.
yep. With not to take over what you were talking about, but I went to 4 different hospitals, for my shunt.
Hmm.
4 different hospitals, and the 3 told me that there was nothing wrong with me. You
Yeah.
know, so yeah, keep like you said, keep going. Different hospitals, keep going.
Right. Yeah.
If you know there's something wrong, go, 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 go.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
or at least call your physician and see what they say too, and maybe they'll get you, admitted right away, or maybe they'll, call the ER physician and say, this person doesn't usually call me and doesn't usually go to the emergency room, and something's wrong when they do this. So,
yeah,
whatever you can do to get that going, especially if you've already had a stroke. I mean, I know some people go at every little cough, or whatever, but there are those of us who don't go unless we really know that we need it, and our doctors know that, and they will usually advocate for us also.
yeah, 100%. Now, Cam, I conclude. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your testimony with the community. It was fantastic. I loved having you on the show, and
Yes,
it was awesome meeting you.
Yeah.
So
I can't wait to talk with you on my show.
for sure.
Yes, because that'll be fun. But just like this was, so I really enjoyed this because number one, I love talking about myself, and number two, I love talking. I just love talking. I'm a talker.
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell.
Oh, oh, really? Okay.
All right. So I conclude all of my shows with the prayer. So let's go ahead and get to it.
All right.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for guiding our paths, intersecting our paths between Cam and I, so that we can join forces and come onto live feed and share our testimonies in hopes that we can bring light, shed light into someone's life and and give them power and strength and courage to move on with their recovery process. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Cam. I'm gonna put all the stuff in the description for you.
All right. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Love
Yep.
it. All
Yep.
right.
All
Good
right.
night.